And one of the fascinating things is that science is a direct legacy of the Judeo-Christian tradition. And let's start absolutely basic. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Hebrew Bible, written millennia ago, knew there was a beginning. It was in the early 60s before scientists caught up with that. I said, at least the Bible got it right. It's not an incomprehensible thing if you start from the idea that there's an intelligent God who made us in his image, and therefore we can do science. And that's exactly what the early pioneers of modern science, starting with Galileo and Kepler and Newton and so on and so forth, they were all believers in God. I'm not remotely ashamed of being a scientist and a Christian, because I want to argue that it was Christianity gave me my subject. C.S. Lewis said, men became scientific because they expected law in nature, and they expected law in nature because they believed in the lawgiver. In the 21st century, we can push back on that very naive notion that God's out, we do science now. No, science actually brings God back in.
The design argument for God's existence argues that there is an implicit and explicit design, order, purpose in creation that points to a creator, a purposer, a designer. You can't help but look at the existence of life on this earth and how strong the odds are, millions and millions to one, that everything aligned just perfectly.
As a scientist,
microbiologist,
biochemist,
as a geologist,
neuroscientist,
physician,
biologist, and an engineer,
I think there is overwhelming evidence for intelligent design in nature.
I see intelligent design in the history of life,
in the genetic code of life,
in the molecular machines inside our cells,
in the complexity of life,
in the information embedded in living things,
in the operation of the human brain,
in the features of the human body.
If simple water molecules that form ice crystals exhibit magnificent structure, consider the design ingenuity behind large, complex molecules, such as DNA. DNA contains the blueprint for all life and is by far the densest information storage mechanism known in the universe. For example, the amount of information contained in a pinhead volume of DNA would fill a stack of books 500 times higher than from here to the moon. The program code and design of such an incredible system indicates a supremely intelligent designer.
The evidence to me that just cries out that there's a God is the study of DNA. DNA is a very powerful, massive information storage system. In fact, DNA that makes up our genes actually is like books of information that's read by a language system. It's absolutely phenomenal. And scientists know today that languages, a code, only come from an intelligence, and information only comes from information. Nobody's ever seen matter by itself give rise to a code. Nobody's ever seen matter by itself give rise to information. And as you look at DNA, it actually cries out, in the beginning, God created the universe.
The anthropic principle has to do with the universe and life. Was the universe set up from the very beginning for the existence of life, and specifically human life? The anthropic principle says yes. The article provides many quotes from famous astronomers, cosmologists, and physicists, such as Robert Jastrow, Steven Weinberg, Alan Sandage, Stephen Hawking, and Albert Einstein. There is a note from Robert Jastrow that says, quote, "The universe is amazingly pre-adapted to the eventual appearance of humanity. For if there were even the slightest variation at the moment of the Big Bang, making conditions different even to a small degree, no life of any kind would exist. In order for life to be present today, an incredibly restrictive set of demands must have been present in the early universe. And they were. Unquote. The article goes on to give some of the demands, such as the gravitational force. The slightest change, as little as 1 part in 10 to the 40th power, would cause catastrophe to the planets and stars. Or the centrifugal force of the planetary movements, the expansion rate of the universe, the speed of light, the average distance between stars, the placement of Jupiter, the tilt degree of the Earth, the rotational speed of the Earth, the thickness of the Earth's crust, the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere, the amount of lightning. Even earthquakes are necessary to sustain life as we know it. A quote from astronomer Robert Dike says, quote, "It may be necessary for the universe to have the enormous size and complexity which modern astronomy has revealed in order for the Earth to be a possible habitation for living beings," unquote. Another quote, this one from the agnostic astronomer Robert Jastrow, says, quote, "The anthropic principle seems to say that science itself has proven as a hard fact that the universe was designed for man to live in," unquote. The anthropic principle is based on recent astronomical evidence for the existence of a superintelligent creator of the universe, and it provides evidence for the teleological argument for the existence of God.
Scientists are telling us today that life in this universe is balanced on a knife's edge. There are about 50 constants of nature, and if they were changed to the slightest degree imaginable, life would not be possible. And they are independent of each other, all these constants. And for them to have been put together, for them to have come together to allow life, seems to cry out for intelligence, for intelligence behind the whole process.
How far the Earth is from the sun, it seems to be just the perfect distance. How far is the moon from the Earth? It seems to be just the perfect distance for life to begin existing. Where exactly are we in our galaxy? Our galaxy is the Milky Way. We happen to find ourselves in just the right place for just the right amount of radiation to allow life to exist. Where are we in our solar system? It turns out we're being shielded by an asteroid belt, something we would need in order for life to exist. Gravity has a wide range of constants where it could have been. It could have been one way, it could have been an entirely different way. And in fact, if we took the entire range of constants where gravity could have been set, and we turned that range into a ruler that expands the length of the universe, and we divide that up in 1-inch increments, so we're talking about a ruler, the length of the universe at 1-inch increments, gravity is exactly where it needs to be in order for life to exist. If it were 1 inch one way, everything would explode. If it were 1 inch the other way, everything would implode. And we're talking about gravity could have been anywhere on that ruler, this cosmic ruler. And so we have to conclude the best explanation, again, is that mind, which we have good reason to believe through the intelligent design argument, is tampering with this dial in order for life to exist. What the intelligent design movement is saying is that we can identify messages in the world around us. We have the ability to say, okay, this message right here has come from an intelligent mind. Then we take what we've learned, we apply it to the world around us, and we say, wow, this world is the product of a mind.
I think the beauty of art, the beauty of, say, the Grand Canyon of the Swiss mountains, or the intricacies of nature, including the way that everything holds together to sustain and validate life or sustain life, are so complex that to me, I just cannot accept that could be purely random chance and necessity. I really, that takes more faith in my mind than to believe that there's a cosmic intelligence with goodness, power, and grace who designed something in which people made in his image could live.
In the last 50 years or so, scientists have discovered to their surprise that the existence of intelligent life in this universe depends upon a complex and delicate balance of initial conditions given in the Big Bang itself. In fact, it appears that the universe has been incredibly fine-tuned for the existence of intelligent life. So that I think the most rational explanation is intelligent design. And a number of scientists have said this as well. For example, Paul Davies, a prominent physicist, has said, "Through my scientific work, I have come to believe more and more strongly that the physical universe is put together with an ingenuity so astonishing that I cannot accept it merely as a brute fact." And Robert Jastrow, who was the head of NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies, has said that this is the most powerful evidence for the existence of God ever to come out of science.
The Big Bang does not disprove the need for God or Creator. That's a confusion of thought. The Big Bang is simply telling us we believe there was a beginning. That is what Genesis has been saying for thousands of years. The point is, Genesis is not only telling us that there was a beginning, it is also telling us what science cannot tell us, the ultimate cause of that beginning, which is God.
My favorite argument for the existence of God that I find the most compelling is a version of the cosmological argument, which goes like this. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. Something can't just come into being from nothing. Secondly, the universe began to exist. I think we have both good philosophical arguments and scientific evidence for the finitude of the past, from which it follows, third, therefore the universe has a cause. And when you do a conceptual analysis of what it is to be a cause of the universe, you arrive at a being which is an uncaused, beginningless, timeless, spaceless, enormously powerful, personal creator of the universe.
That's, if you ask who created God, you're believing in a created God. Normal word for created God is an idol. Neither you nor I believe in those. But I said, your question is only valid for created gods. It has no relevance to an uncreated God that the Bible reveals the God of the universe to be. So you're missing the essential point. But I said, since your question is valid for created things, okay, let me apply it to you. You believe the universe created you. Okay, who created your creator?
The moral argument is one of the most fascinating argument, and for me, I think is the most compelling, because we exist in a universe that has do's and don'ts. It has rules of behavior. There are things we are supposed to do and things that we are not supposed to do.
Every human being has this sense that we are truly and really, in reality, obligated to avoid evil and to do good. Everybody has that sense of conscience. There's this real sense within every human being that there is an ought, there is a moral imperative that comes from somewhere. And it is universal, and so if it's universal, it's not just culturally shaped, even though some morality, certainly we would acknowledge, has some cultural factors in it. But this universal ought, this universal imperative, has to point to something bigger than humanity.
Morality or moral properties have a very interesting feature, and this is they are normative. They tell us how we are supposed to behave, what we're supposed to do, and what we are not supposed to do. And if that is the case, if they are normative, if we have moral duties, not just moral values, things that we have to do, it really does cry out, in my view, for a moral lawgiver, if we do have moral duties.
Does the existence of universal morality point towards God, or can morality just be explained by, say, evolution? Well, what is it about objective morality that requires God, or divine grounding, so to speak? Well, morals aren't part of the physical world. You can't weigh them like you can a rock or a glass of water. They seem to be immaterial or spiritual. They contain information, tell the truth, do right, be faithful, and information comes from a mind. And for there to really be a real right and wrong, there needs to be a source outside of human beings. Otherwise, it's just your opinion versus mine. So if there are real moral values and duties, it sure seems to point towards the existence of a moral lawgiver, towards a God.
I am out walking today on the hogbacks in Canyon City, Colorado. It's a very dry, arid climate here, and cactus thrive without much water, and it amazes me that these plants can flower in such arid conditions. We have not had much rain here for many weeks, but then these plants are blooming today. It prompts me to ponder nature and all that God has created. Then I ask the question, how can anybody believe that God does not exist? But alas, some eyes are blinded and hearts are hardened, and do not seek the glorious Creator of all things. But then, nobody really has an excuse not to know that God does exist. Scripture says this, quote, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." The details, the immensity, the diversity, and complexity of nature show thoughtfulness, creativity, and beauty. It's difficult to imagine how such intricacies could have come to be without an intelligent and beautiful Creator. Yes, nature can be awe-inspiring, even to the point of being almost incomprehensible. The richness of a sunset, the twinkling of stars, and the diversity of animals all witness to a Creator and a Designer. One of the things that reminds me of God's creative genius and beauty are the multitudes of flowers He has made. Just see for yourself, and then ask the question, how did all these beautiful plants come to be? And then ponder the diversity and number of animals God has created by His wonderful imagination. Scripture reminds us that the Lord has formed out of the ground all the wild animals and the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea. But then ask the animals and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky and they will tell you, or speak to the earth and it will teach you, or let the fish in the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In His hand is the life of every creature. And then ponder the heavens and its beauty and immensity. And then meditate on our own human body and all its marvelous functions, from the immense complexity of the human cell, the eye, the brain, and all that makes us functional as God's highest creation. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness." God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it." So I will give God the glory for all He has made and set before our eyes to point the way to Him. But then He has also given us His written word and His Son to reveal to us His grace, His love, His majesty, and also the way into His presence.